We owe something to all the kingdoms of nature that give us food and give us health at all times. We owe something to all the different levels of society which give us protection or give us opportunities. We owe a great deal to those who help us to achieve a good education or develop good habits. Everywhere we owe a lot to life, and that means that we have that debt that must always be paid. If we accept life and do not pay the debt, we will reap death. This is all part of the physical world. It is a world that you can study geographically with its mountains and its streams, its lakes and its valleys. It is also the psychological globe or world, which we can say is made up of moods, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, customs. All these things are part of a social or civilized world government or world life. Each of these things has to be given consideration, and we can hope sincerely that each individual who really wants to improve will give some thought and some effort to correcting the imperfections of his own nature. Not because we want to hurt him or worry him or we want to torture him, but simply we want to save him from the inevitable suffering that comes from willfulness or ignorance. We have now better knowledge of many things than we had before, but we also have developed a strange and almost uncontrollable abandon economically and socially. We live only to spend, and in order to do this we must steal. And if we take the other man's money, it's exactly like taking his food. For if it is his life and its only support and only security, we have no right to make this impossible to him. The human body has to be at peace. Now, where does the human body most often get sick? Well, I have been told, in fact my old friend Evangeline Adams, the astrologer, told me once, that sickness and death always begin with the intestines. That nearly everything that destroys us is some kind of an indigestion. It can be a religious indigestion that makes us a fanatic. It can be a social indignation or indigestion that makes us antisocial. It can be almost anything, but it is something that has to do with a digestion and assimilation. It means that we've taken in something that cannot be properly handled by the body, that we are not giving the body its due care and attention, that if we do not take care of it, it will start to disintegrate, and when it wants to go, it will make the intestinal tract a living hell while we're still in this world. It can be a very serious and terrible thing. So we have to prepare. Now, if we want to keep out of hell morally, according to our friends the theologians, we've got to keep the good word. And if we want to stay out of the hell of intestinal disintegration, we've got to watch what we eat, how we eat, and when. We also must always realize that all food must be taken with a gentle spirit. No one should eat when he's angry, eat when he's upset, eat when he is not hungry, or these kind of things. But he should so live that about 3 times a day or thereabouts he will be happy enough to eat normally. If he does that, he will probably have a pretty good digestive system. But everything we do goes right back to an analogy or a simile in the body itself. We find that we are also composed of creatures that have reaction to what we eat. Now, it should never be forgotten that every food element has a dispositional factor. To a certain measure, we are what we eat. Not entirely, but perhaps all forms of food have moral and psychological reactions. And many an individual who thinks he's dying of a bad psychosis is simply dying of frustrated indigestion. All the different things that we have to do are very simple. Now, the ancients pointed out that the more money we have and the more luxurious we are, the more likely we are to be sick. Because the moment we become luxury-loving, we are in serious trouble. And a man went to a Greek philosopher and said, Master, if I was to damn a man, what could I do that would most destroy him? And the philosopher thought for a couple of minutes. Well, if you wish to do the worst thing you can do him, tell him you hope that his sons will live luxuriously. Because if so, they will be a disgrace to you for the rest of their lives. So all these things go back to the body. They go back to the physical structure with which we are endowed. They tell us something that we should watch and listen. We cannot solve these problems with stomach pills. We cannot get away from these mistakes. We cannot get away from the dangers of alcoholism. We cannot get over the disabilities of cigarette smoking. We cannot possibly get over narcotic addiction, and we can't get over all forms of rich and indigestible foods. These things are destroying not just us, but imagine now that we became infinitely small, and we're located somewhere in the southwest corner of the liver. It's a funny place to be, but it'll do for the moment. Being in the place of the liver, and being a 1/1,000,000th of an inch in diameter, and we are there, and this is our homeland. This is the land for which our fathers died, this little piece in the corner of the liver. And in the midst of the fact that we're getting along pretty well, the family is secure, we're just getting down to the point where life will be pleasant. Suddenly there's a terrible agitation. An earthquake has struck the liver. Now, what caused the earthquake? Overindulgence. There may have been a little psychosis of the liver thrown in. But all of a sudden, this little being, everything that's important is taken away from it. It has no longer the power to live. It has no longer the power to do anything. Its world has been destroyed by somebody who ate too much. And who is his God? He had no way of resisting this. But all of a sudden, the power that fashioned him destroys him. And he gets very little not to understand. All he can do, if he can do anything, is to weep and fade away. Now in another world, such as we're in the big one like now, all right, instead of being in the corner of the liver, you could be in the center of Armenia a few weeks ago, when a great earthquake came through and destroyed better than 30,000 people. This seems to be an act of nature. Nobody knows what to do about it. They just think it's one of those things that happen. We don't have to think that, because long ago, back in Alexandria, when they were studying all these types of things, they realized that earthquakes do not come just simply out of indifference in nature or accidents that can't be described. Just as the individual destroyed the little bit of power of the liver to take care of that little cell, so earthquakes are acts of moral reaction to a great body suffering from sickness. The planet can be sick. It can have a broken heart. It probably has. It can have dyspepsia. It can have angina pectoris. It can have neurosis. It can become completely involved in some mysterious psychic stress pattern. It can become mentally disturbed, emotionally disturbed. It can have anything happen to it that can happen to a human body, because after all, it's all one pattern, only degree of magnitude, not any change in the actual pattern itself. So as long as we are bad to the body, individual, we will have those problems. And as long as humanity is bad to the body, the earth on which it lives, the time will come, as they said in India, when the Great Mother will shake us again from the face of her body. All these things are part of a pattern. And the human body is, as Paracelsus said, the little book in which we can see happening around us and within us practically every faction and function that we observe today. It is definitely a part of our inevitable. that we should see the analogy.